Hello everyone, it's August 29th, 2017. It's Tuesday. It's Harp Tuesday! And in this episode of Harp Tuesday, what I'm going to be talking about is using a tablet, in this case an iPad, to read music from. So, specifically I'm using forScore, which is an app on an iPad Air, but I'll be talking sort of generally about this idea of, instead of using printed music, using music on a tablet. And I'm going to start by just a little bit of a story time of how I got into this, because while I enjoy technology and I love working with computers, I don't really like e-readers, for example. I love actually having a physical book. And so I wasn't an early adopter of having tablets and reading music from them. But in 2015, I guess, I spent 9 weeks in Europe in the fall, and I do a lot of Skype lessons, Skype teaching. Actually, shameless plug, I might have some availability, email me if you're interested. And the thing about Skype is, in a sort of normal, traditional lesson, the student will bring their music with them. With Skype, I need to have a copy of that music myself on my music stand or whatever, so that I can follow along. And, I had all these different folders with various students' music, but I didn't want to bring all that with me in Europe, as I was trying to continue teaching while I was in Europe. So I ended up getting an iPad and forScore, this app, and it worked out just fantastically. And I've loved using it since. With the folders, it worked, but it was annoying because what if multiple people are playing the same piece? Or you got a book where various people are playing different pieces from the same book, or if I wanted this piece of music in my stack of music for gigs or whatever, and just a certain amount of work to try to keep that all organized. And here with forScore, you can create playlists, so I can have a playlist for each student. Here's this practice playlist for example, and there all their music is. So it's fantastic. And if you do a lot of Skype lessons, I teach a lot of Skype lessons, I would highly recommend investigating this idea. But of course, that's a very specific and small portion of people. So is this something that you might be interested in? Well, let's talk some more and find out. So I'm going to start, I guess, by talking about some of the more unusual ways, or the ways you might not think of using it, that I found helpful, and then get on to the nitty-gritty of using it to perform or to practice with. So it's actually been great to be able to look at public domain music. So for example, the Harp archives at archive.org, the American Harp Society Harp Archives. It's fun to browse through all that music, and it's not often, at least for me, I'm not always sure. I might say, well, this looks potentially interesting to play, but I'm not sure. And so it's great not to have to stay printed out, and my harp's not set up to be near enough to my computer to be able to read it. I can just now download it on my iPad, play through it, and see if it's something I want to work on. So just a really handy ability. And of course, for traditional music, there's, I believe it's the session, right? This vast collection of different traditional tunes. And again, it could be really handy to be able to just have that tablet on your music stand and try out a new, try out a new jig, try out a new piece, whatever, and see, is this something you actually want to work on? Whether you end up working on it from the tablet or printing it out, and we'll talk about that later. Following along orchestral scores. So sometimes when you're learning a harp part to an orchestra piece, it can be really helpful to follow along with actual score, see what everything's doing. And this is so much easier, this just designed to read music, than trying to scroll along on a PDF on your computer or laptop screen. At least that's what I found. And it leaves you free to have your laptop or computer, maybe playing a YouTube video and potentially being able to watch the conductor or whatever. So super useful that way. And then composing and typesetting, and I just finished publishing a book and a couple other pieces, and I found it was a tremendous help for my workflow, because I would, in Finale, I would get a version ready, export it to PDF, put it on my tablet, play it, make any corrections on forScore on my tablet, note down any changes or corrections or errors or clarifications that I wanted to put in, and then go back to Finale, enter those in, create a new version, put it on the tablet, etc. Not having to print out all those copies is just a tremendous boon to my workflow. Okay, so then let's talk just sort of about using it as the majority of what we might be using it for to read music from. So here's what it looks like. Let's see, this is Bach Toccata and Fugue. Okay, hopefully not too much glare. We can tap to change, turn the page. If I've got it set up so if I press and hold, it now enters a mode where I can you see that? Hopefully, where I can write. In this case, I've chosen red. So I'm writing, in this case, just swirling around, making crazy swirls. Hopefully you can see that. And I can undo that. There's also an eraser that I can use. So there's that ability to make some notes as you're going along, lever changes, pedal changes. Now, as far as notes go, what I found is that on this, which is an iPad Air 9.7 inches, if I want to make sort of actually decent notes, I would need to zoom in, and then I could write a fairly decent, say, pedal change there. Sorry, try to get this to focus. Yes, maybe, I don't know. Hopefully that's coming through at least. Yeah, there we are. But to try and do that non-zoomed in, it doesn't work. It's okay. You can kind of jot down some notes, but for kind of like a really great look, I can't do that at least with my finger. Now, the iPad Pro, ideally you'd be using an iPad Pro 12.9 inches larger and an Apple Pencil. I haven't experimented with a stylus on this, but potentially that is, and a stylus, right, is just this idea of a kind of like a pen or a pencil where you can write on, it's pressure, that writes on the tablet. So that might be, an option, but it is a little bit more difficult for me at the moment than pen and paper, than paper and pencil, because I have to zoom in and then do it and zoom out again. What it is fantastic for is Skype Lessons again. As I'm listening to somebody play, I don't want to stop them, maybe they keep going, but I can circle something so that I remember, 5 minutes later or whatever, to say, oh yeah, and over there, I think that could be more of a crescendo, or, watch your hand position there or whatever, just as a, aid to my memory. So again, we have an option of creating these notes, and we've got these playlists. We import the music as a PDF through, the easiest way is to do it through some sort of cloud-based thing like Dropbox is what I use, or iCloud or Google Drive. And we can create these set lists where any of the music that we have stored in the program can be added to a set list. And that same piece of music could be added to any number of set lists. And each time you add it, it will include any annotations that you've put on it. So it's, you have those same capabilities as a normal physical piece of paper. You can make notes. Again, in my current setup, it's a little bit more annoying than actual physical pencil and paper, but it works. It works okay. And let's talk about page turns. So we have this option of just tapping. I actually have used that. I performed with that, where I'm just tapping to change the page. In theory, it's actually faster than a page flip, because you just reach out and tap it. Now, of course, you hope that it actually registers the tap, and it's pretty good about that. But just like when you're trying to turn a page really fast, maybe you kind of misfire. There's always that risk. Of course, you're having to do twice as many page turns as, say, a normal book, right? You've got 2 pages, and then you have to turn a page. And then you got 2 more pages. Here, we always turn page, page, page. And actually, it's kind of funny because I did a couple Harp Tuesday episodes in Croatia on that European trip. And they were from medieval to modern, both 2-page pieces. But as I recall, at least one and maybe both didn't really have any time when the left hand wasn't busy. So this thing, which was easy in a physical piece of paper, because there were 2 pages, was really hard. Now, one of the options that forScore does offer is a timing thing. Like, okay, you tell it you're starting to play, and then it's gonna, and how long you want this first page to be and second page, etc. And then it'll turn it after that amount of time. That's what I ended up doing for that one episode at least. But that's kind of sketchy. Yeah. So the other option, of course, is to get some sort of Bluetooth pedal. And this is something I looked into when I first got the tablet, but I was heading to Europe. I got one, I think it's an AirPed, which was basically just a flat thing with some small raised indentations for the 2 pedals that obviously there's a pressure sensor, right? So if you push hard enough, it will register that you're trying to turn the page, connected through Bluetooth to the iPad. But I found it just annoying. It was hard to feel. I was actually on the pedal, and it's, of course, we use, on the pedal harp, we use our feet all the time. So I didn't end up getting it, but I have recently, so gotten this. Now this is a Donner Bluetooth pedal. They're available on Amazon. I think they're about $80 Canadian. It looked like they're 64 American right at the moment. And this has a little bit more to me of physical resistance and ability to show. Oops, I should show, know whether you've pressed it, right? Yeah, there's a bit of a gap here, right? There's this, again, it must be some sort of pressure thing. It's not a mechanical action, but I've actually been really happy with this and how it works. Now, it took me a little getting used to, because again, it's like adding this extra pedal, and it gave me a fresh appreciation for how challenging pedals can be if you're just starting using pedals on a harp. But it's starting to now become automatic, and just like that idea of athletes, right? Like tennis players, where I believe brain scans tend to, it's as if their body extends through that racket, right? It becomes part of your body. So as if this, this pedal has become part of my body, just as the 7 pedals of the harp are part of my body. That further extension of your physical awareness or whatever. And originally, as I was using this, so specifically this Bach Toccata and Fugue, which, it's the well, as it gets into it, there's no chance to turn the page with the left hand. So if it's not memorized, you're in a lot of trouble. And initially, as I use this, so let's demonstrate. Oops. Sorry. So if you can see this, so if I press this, it will turn the page. Fantastic. Now, if you play lever harp, for example, or a lot of instruments, that's all you need, right? That's great. It's, your feet can just be sitting there, and if you make a mistake, you can press the other one to go back. Is this registering? I can't actually see. No, it's not. Oh, it should go back. Yeah, there we go. Okay, just need to press it harder. But what I found was, in a piece like this, which has a fair number of pedal changes, it was a bit of a challenge to time that, to have that, right as you get to the end of that page, you got to change that, push that pedal. Well, maybe that foot's busy, right? Maybe, and I have it set up on my left side, so I can actually glance down and look at it right near my music stand. And forScore gives you this option of doing half page turns. So that then will look like this. Right? So, for example, we're getting toward, once we get past the middle of this page, we can at any point press it. And now we've got the top half of the next page showing, as well as what we're playing, the bottom half of this current page. And then once we get onto the start of the next page, at some point we can press this and get the rest of that first page. And we can adjust this midpoint, right? We can move this up or down. Sorry. That's a little hard because I have to be looking back and forth. Is this? Oh. We can drag this midpoint up or down, and I don't want to muck around with that too much, depending on where we would find it most useful, right? Maybe we want to wait until the very end to change. Maybe we want to change right once we get to the new page, and have it be possible. So that actually has worked out fantastically. Now, what I've done then, what I had to found I had to do, this piece at least, was indicate, in this case by a yellow marking, approximately where I want to change, where I want to reach down and press that pedal. Because sometimes, again, feet are busy, and you might get to the end of the page and realize, oops, I got to change it, and it's not done. So I actually, just like a pedal change, I had a page turn change marked in there. And I found that to be a fantastic solution. So again, maybe if you got it memorized, no worries. But if you're trying to play something that has challenging page turns, this actually is a fantastic option, even despite the fact that we are busy using our feet to change the pedals. Again, I don't know how I could have played this without memorizing it with the physical music. So foot pedal works out pretty well with that half page turn. I think is a fantastic option. And yeah, so I've used it now to perform a reasonable amount. Let's talk about where it's most useful, I guess, or just like so. On the concert stage, right? I think it's got some advantages in that there is no. It's actually easier page turns than physical page turns, especially if you're playing lever harp. Then it's a piece of cake. I think it's the physical size of it, and again, you can get like something that will clamp on and then attach to, say, a mic stand. It creates a better sight line. I mean, harp is such a fun instrument to watch that having a music stand there right in front of some people's view, I always feel a little bit sad about that. So this potentially creates a much smaller visual impediment, and I think is actually a big bonus that way. There's no sound of turning the pages. And potentially, if the lights go out, you can still see your music. Now, I think it's also fantastic for gigs. If you do a lot of gigs, whether it's weddings or background music or whatnot, you can have these playlists organized for each individual wedding or different sets that you want to do. You got all your music, rather than having to lug around a suitcase or whatever of physical music, you got all of it here. And these days, I think for most people, if someone, say, requests a new song, you're probably just going to buy the sheet music online, right? And now, rather than needing to print it out, you just have it on your tablet. So I think it's fantastic that way. It's also great if you're playing outside, right? Because there's no worries about having to worry about the wind, and that can always be a problem. Sure, you can clamp down your pages, but what if you have to turn the page? So here you've got it covered. You might potentially have to worry about glare, but the iPad is pretty good, and hopefully you've got shade. So I think for gigging, I think it's fantastic. And yeah, the fact that it's super light, you can store all this music on it is great. And now for learning new pieces, I'm still not at the point where I'm using that for, say, recital, virtuosic type pieces. I want to have the physical copy, be able to use a pencil, write down any notations, pedal changes, fingerings, whatever I want to put on there, and learn it that way at this point. But if, at some point I would like to get the iPad Pro 12-inch or 12.9 or whatever, and Apple Pencil, and at that point I might just learn directly from the iPad. And obviously, if a piece has a lot of difficult page turns, then it's actually a boon to have the pedal going and the changes there, rather than maybe always kind of having a bit of a hitch, as you're learning a piece and there's that page turn, right? You never actually get to see this bottom line followed by this one, whereas here on this with the half turns, you can have that visual continuity as you're learning, which can be very handy. And I've definitely learned some less challenging pieces or orchestral harp parts or whatever just on the iPad. So is it for you? Well, let's see. If you have an iPad, forScore I think is $10 US. I mean, if you're at all interested, I think it's a fantastic bargain. forScore is actually the reason I got an iPad, just because it's I think it's the premium sort of sheet music app, and there's nothing quite as good on the Android or the Windows platform. And I've never been I've never been a Mac person. I have a PC, and I enjoy those. But the iPad's been fantastic. It's been super reliable, and I think, of course, that's one of the hallmarks of the Apple product line. And of course, that's what you want, right? You're not necessarily looking for best bang for your buck. You're looking in a situation like this when you're performing. You want to make sure that it's going to work, and this works very well. So if you have an iPad and you're interested in exploring what virtual sheet music might be like, I think it's it's $10. It's definitely worth it. Now, of course, if you have a tablet, you don't have to have forScore to kind of explore a little bit, right? As long as you've got something that opens PDFs, whether it's Kindle or the built-in PDF handler on your tablet is, you can see what it's like to, say, read music from this. And I haven't worked with any of the Android apps or the Windows programs, so I don't have any recommendations there. But again, if you have an existing, say, a Samsung tablet or a Surface Pro or whatever, you might experiment with that. Whether it's worth it to you to invest in an iPad if you don't already have one. Again, if you teach a lot of Skype lessons, yeah, I'd say sure. If you do a lot of gigs I would seriously consider it just because of the ease of use for that, and I think it's fantastic for that. If you're mainly practicing, maybe you don't perform at all. If you're just using it to practice, I don't know. You want to cut down clutter? Sure, go for it. Anyway, hopefully just a little bit of an intro into this idea of using a tablet as a sheet music reader. And for me, I wasn't initially that enthused about it, but I found it to be super useful. And again, I highly recommend forScore as a program. And I think a foot pedal is potentially a good investment if you're looking at using it, certainly for performance. So hope that was helpful. And I'll be back next week with a Slow Motion Monday, and 2 weeks from now, another Harp Tuesday episode. Cheers.